growing luminous. On the mystic path, we create our own light, and at first we struggle blind and baffled, seeing nothing, hearing nothing, unable to think, unable to imagine. We seem deserted by dream, vision, or inspiration, but our meditation barren altogether. But let us persist through weeks or months, and sooner or later that stupor disappears. Our faculties readjust themselves and do the work we will them to do. Never did they do their work so well. The dark canvas of the brain begins to glow luminous. We are creating our own light. George William Russell.
Ah, thank you so much. That's from the back cover of our Still and Moving Center Almanac, which is where we get our themes for each week at Gems from the Wisdom Traditions, a conversation circle that is sponsored by Still and Moving Center. This week, we are taking up the theme of from greed to generosity. And so I think it is that same kind of transition that we were talking about in the passage that we just heard of, from going from darkness into light. That barrenness is maybe something of that root of greed. Today, we're very fortunate to have with us Professor Ramdas Lam, who has been a Hindu ascetic himself from the Ramananda tradition. And he is going to speak to us on that tradition today. He's someone who we've cherished so often coming to Gems, and we look forward to hearing you again today, Ramdas. Thank you.
Thank you, Renee. Thank you very much. And thank you, everyone. Okay, so greed. I think when we think about greed, we have to kind of think about it in the context of other emotions, because they're not lust, greed, anger, pride, apathy. Okay, those they often refer to as the five fetters, the five obstacles towards spiritual realization. And of them, so I'm gonna kind of put them in a bit of a different order, and I'm gonna start with apathy. Well, first of all, they're not concepts, they're emotions. So we can't rationally, just like we can't rationally address our emotions, we can rationally think about ourselves and how we deal with ourselves in order to then work on our emotions. But there isn't necessarily a rational way for somebody who is emotional, for a rational way to overcome them very easily. So we need, I think, and in the Ramananda tradition, we say that there are practices that you can do that will move you in a different direction. So you're not going to overcome the emotion as much as you're going to leave that emotion in preference for something else. It's kind of like addictions, addictions to alcohol, addictions to tobacco, addictions to these various things. The way you get beyond them is by replacing them with something else, hopefully. And so in our tradition, we talk about things that we can do to replace it. I just want to talk about them a little bit. Apathy, the idea of, I don't care, I don't give a darn about anybody or anything, right? Unfortunately, I find that a lot with students now. They don't care if they flunk. They're like, I mean, they're there only because their parents told them to go to school. They're not there because they want to be there. They come to class not unprepared. And why is this? Because they have an emptiness in their life. If you have something to strive for, then you're going to strive. If you have nothing to strive for, you're going to strive. And then anger comes when things are not going the way we want them to go. And so anger comes, but apathy can be overcome. Anger can be overcome. Then we have lust, and lust is actually it's very connected with our growing up, with our natural being, to have a desire for a sexual interaction. Obviously, when you're a child, you don't have that. Eventually, it comes to a point where that becomes important in your life, and the hormonal years, and then the next decade or so, maybe a couple of decades, that becomes very much a part of your life. But once again, that can be overcome in the sense that you can have hopefully it's a romantic experience rather than just a sexual experience, and then it satisfies you for a while, and then maybe it will come again, but you can overcome that in the same way with anger. You get angry, and then you can kind of overcome the anger for a while. And then pride is one of the more difficult ones because pride stays with you. And that can be overcome by understanding others, by understanding people, by understanding who you are. The internal search is the one thing that is really good for overcoming pride. But then the worst of all of them is greed. And the reason the worst of all of them is greed is apathy, anger, lust, and pride can be overcome. And as we grow, hopefully we will get the tools to move us in a different direction where those are no longer controlling our lives. They're no longer addictions. And all of these are addictions. In fact, a lot of emotions have an addictive quality to them, and therefore they have a destructive quality to them. Hatred, jealousy, fear, many of these. But greed is a unique one. It's like it's a terminal illness, because once you get it, it's like Alzheimer's, or it's like HIV, where once you have it, I mean, you can learn to control it, but you never really overcome it. And that's why you see people, maybe as they get older, you see them, they found something they want, they can now interested in doing, so the apathy is gone. They learn to control their anger. They direct their anger more to the self, frustration with the self for not doing well, and lust and pride, all of those, we learn to deal with them. We learn that, and they don't become so much a part, or we get to a point in our lives where those are not so much of an issue. But greed, once a person is greedy, they're greedy all the time. And I remember when I was young, there was a guy by the name of H.L. Hunt. At the time, I think it was he and Rockefeller were like the two richest people in the United States, maybe even in the world. I don't know. They were very rich. And H.L. Hunt had a payphone in his house. And whenever somebody came over and they wanted to use the phone, this is long before cell phones, he'd make them put money in. Even for his kids. It's like, you got to learn the cost of things. That's greed. And Ted Turner, it was about 15 years ago. Ted Turner gave away, well, he claimed to give $1 billion to UNICEF, I think, United Nations International Children's Education Fund. And of course, it was on CNN because he owned CNN, and a big hoopla about Ted Turner giving away all this money, $1 billion. He was worth a variety of billions at that time, so 1 billion, not a big thing to him in relation to what even maybe $1,000 might be to other people now, even. So, so he was interviewed about 6 months after he is said to have given it. He was interviewed on CNN. And obviously the questions were probably prepared since this is his station. But the one guy who asked the question, maybe off the cuff, he said, "So did you already give it all to them?" It's like, and he said, "Well," and they admitted, "Actually, I agreed to give 100 million a year for 10 years. And then he added, provided how my stocks do." So, but the guy then kind of caught himself and realized he had to say something more, the interview, and said, so how, what is it in you that can make you do this for people? And he says, "Well, I don't need a lot of money." He says, "By the time you have the cars and the boats and the houses and the planes and on all those things. I don't need a whole lot. And he says, you know, I can live on 150 million a year. And for him, that was living simple. That's greed. That's a person who has no concept of people. All he has is a concept of himself and his own fulfillment. And there were a variety of people that have been very popular and powerful in our country. Steve Jobs was another one, where this took them over, and excuse me, and it was a part of their lives, pretty much their whole life. I think right at the end, Steve Jobs, he became. I think he realized right at the end that what he had done was wrong, and I think he worked on it during the last 2 years of his life.
Is there any hope for us? I mean, if it's
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
unapproachable, it's sounding pretty grim.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's why, and so I'm gonna get now to how do we cure it, right? And Renee, as you know, when I was a sadhu, and I think I told you the story, one time I was with my teacher and we had been at this festival in Prayag, and then I was gonna go back to the Himalayas. I was gonna travel like maybe 1,000 miles to get back up into the Himalayas. And so my teacher said to me, he says, "Do you have any money?" And I said, "Yeah, I do." He says, "How much do you have?" And I had 15 rupees. And in those days, 15 rupees was $2. I figured, you know, as a sadhu, as a monk, you could get on the bus and they wouldn't ask you for a bus ticket, and if you're a monk, and there were ways, and you just live simple. And so he gave me 50 rupees. And he said, "Here, take this. I'm not going to ever give you any more money, but you know what? You'll never be broke after this." And I've never been broke since that time, even though I continued to be a monk for another 7 years. And so, but he said to me, he says, "But be sure and give some of this away right away. Anytime anybody gives you anything, share it. Know that it's not yours. It was given to you as a gift. And so then you need to be a vehicle of sharing that with someone else. And if you do that in your life, then the illness of greed will not take you over." And so I think that's the real key. And as you know, there are many people who are very wealthy and are not greedy. There are people who are wealthy and use that wealth to benefit others. But then there are those who become addicted to greed and they can't overcome it in their entire lives. And that's really sad. And that's people who control countries. They have a greed for power. And unfortunately, so many of our politicians have been have come under that becomes integral to their lives. But for those of us, the rest of us, those of us who understand the importance of the spiritual life, understand the importance of doing good, being good, right? I'm trying to just adjust this a little bit. Okay. Understand the importance of knowing who we are. Soon we realize that we have to move beyond our attachments to the external world. And so greed is a big obstacle for that. And so if we really want to go inside, then we begin to start letting go of the things on the outside. That's the one cure, I think, for greed, is self-knowledge. Once I know myself, I begin to realize that what I really need is self-understanding, awareness. And I've talked about this. I know when you sent out the invitation, you sent the recording of my discussion of Hanuman. So I listened to it again. You know, what did I say? And so I talk some of the things in there. I mean, I think are important in the sense that know the self. We have to go inside, and when we go inside, we find that And we think of the verse that I mentioned, Hanumanji in the Ananda Ramayana, when he meets Ram, and he says to Ram, as a body, I am your servant, as a soul, a part of you, a limb of you, and as spirit, you and I are one. So when we began to understand our own spiritual nature, then we begin to understand that actually you have spiritual nature too, and other things have a spiritual nature. I just had my students watch in my ethics class, watch a fantastic documentary. It's called What Plants Talk About. And even mother plants care for their young. And you realize that mothers are the greatest expression of selfless devotion. And so my teacher once said to me, until you become like a woman, you can never really learn devotion. And what he really meant, and because we've talked about it in the sense of the caring that a mother does. And sure, as men, as fathers, we care in our own way. We don't care in the way that mothers care. There's an intimacy with motherhood that unfortunately men don't have. We have other ways our intimacy in our care for our family is important. And most of us men will die to protect our families. But there's just something unique about mothers in the way they protect and the selflessness, the way that they will give up. Their needs are no longer important, the needs of their children. And for many men, their needs are no longer important. It's the needs of their family. So I tell my students, if you really want to learn selflessness, have kids, right? Get married and have kids. And then you realize it's not about you anymore. It's about them. And so I think that is a real important key. So now as a monk, because we're celibate, didn't have kids, so what we did is we fed people. And so you go into a Ramanandi monastery, and it's great. People donate money, and as soon as there's a donation, it goes right to the kitchen. All right, make food. And the first thing you do is feed everybody there. And then all the people who live around the ashram know that they feed people. When I was in India 2 years ago, because I'm writing a book on the Ramanandis, and I went to these various ashrams. Some of these ashrams, they're feeding 1,500 people a day. And there was maybe 150, 200 living at the ashram, big ashram. But they would make enough money for enough food for about 1,500 people just to feed others. Right? And anybody, you can come. I mean, you can drive up in a very expensive car and sit down and eat for free. It's just giving. Giving becomes the key. Giving is the medicine to overcome greed. And I mean, you guys know it. Renee, what you and Cliff do is a good example. So that's the way we can do it. And that's the way we can all do it. But we need a moral compass. And once again, my students, and I mentioned this in the last talk that I gave, I'll ask my students, where did you get your moral kind of grounding? And they don't really know what I'm talking about. Because most of them don't have a moral grounding. They don't know what that means. They can lie and they can cheat so easily. They just see that it's a natural thing. I ask them, how often do you lie? Oh, what do you mean? I don't really lie. And then when I start talking and I ask about this and ask about this, then they, oh yeah, well, I do that. Okay. And 70% there's a magazine of education. I can't remember the name of it right now. They did a study about 10 years ago, and they asked college students, how many of you have cheated on the exam? 70% admitted to it. So, because I care about myself. Truth is not an important thing to us. When truth becomes an important thing to us, when understanding our connection with others, then the game changes. Then it's no longer about myself. And when my life is no longer about myself and my greed, we have the opportunity to overcome greed. And so that's the real key. The problem is the truly greedy people, greed for power. I mean, students ask me, who do you vote for? And I tell them, I vote for the person who doesn't want to be in office. Because if somebody, especially for president, somebody wants to be president, they want to rule the world. That's problematic. I find it difficult just to rule myself. And that's a lifelong job. And I think for many of us, that is our lifelong job, is to learn to overcome our ignorances, to overcome our fears, to overcome our all the things that become obstacles to knowing God. And if we can let go of those, and once again, from the Christian tradition, seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all things will be added to you. Meister Eckhart, one of my greatest, the person who I look to, the teachings of whom just so great. He says, God is always with us. It's us who go out for a walk. So it's always right there. The presence is always there. Goodness is always there. We can look at Thich Nhat Hanh, and he talks about consciousness, and he talks about mindfulness. It's the same thing, being conscious. And if we are truly conscious, then we know what truth is. We know what is valuable. And the things that go away are not the valuable ones. The things that remain, as they often say, you never see a truck full of goods following a hearse. Can't take it with you. Even though people have tried some of the earliest burial sites, and until recently, the oldest burial site was about 75,000 years. More recently, they found a burial site that they're estimating maybe 200,000 years. And still, in those burial sites, they find remnants of foodstuffs that are left, tools of the day, whether they're stone tools or something, because we think there's an afterlife. Got to give them something to take with them. We know that's not going to happen. Right.
Yeah. Hey, can I ask a question then from what you've said so far?
Yeah.
I'm starting to wonder whether this shift from greed toward generosity, which you identified as having something to do with an understanding of the self.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's the real key, because
so if we don't have that understanding of the self, it seems as though there's always something lacking, because we don't realize that true self is part of the whole.
yeah, I mean, think of what Ted Turner said, right? I mean, he can get by on 150 million a year. Gee, how nice of him, right? He had no concept of self. He thinks that unless I have enough to totally gratify every one of my sensual desires every moment of the day, then I can be happy. So his concept of self is concept of senses.
Mm-hmm.
His sensual experience is the only thing that is meaningful to him. So no inner experience at all. You know, and you read the stories of people who have been very wealthy, who have been very destructive in the world. And it's all about them. Right? It's all about, yeah. And that's why when
the
we,
stories of people like Ramana Maharshi, for example,
yeah,
they're all people who have nothing for themselves for the most part. The Gandhis, the Jesuses.
Gandhi had 8 possessions when he died, and 2 of them were his wooden shoes, right? He didn't have a lot, and he wanted to get less than that. We as a sadhu, I was very fortunate. I carried a bag that was maybe about 12, 13 inches this way, and about 4 inches, 5 inches this way, and about 10 inches that. All my possessions were in that bag except a blanket that I would throw over it. I'd put a bag on my shoulder and throw the blanket and a water bottle. That was it. And then what I was wearing. And lived that way for many years. And I know sadhus who my bag was big compared to theirs. We
Mhm.
don't need a lot.
Cliff, I see your hand up.
Hi.
Hi there. Thanks. Thanks,
Nice to
Rhonda.
see you, Cliff.
Good
Hi.
good to see you again, even virtually,
Yes.
and everyone else too.
Yes.
I was wondering if maybe we could look at this theme of generosity and greed kind of in a big way, in a more of a macrocosmic way or whatever. I was
Mhm.
thinking that there's the teaching that man is a microcosm of the macrocosm.
Mhm.
Everything that's at work in the universe and nature and the cosmos is also at work in us.
Yeah.
And Simone Weil, the French philosopher, made this quote that's always stuck with me when she said that there's just two forces in the whole universe. There's light and gravity.
Mhm.
And I thought that was pretty cool. And that you could maybe connect light with generosity and gravity with greed.
Yeah.
And when you think of all the virtues, they all seem to be kind of sacrificial, giving, have something to do with going out from oneself, whereas almost all the vices have to do with pulling centripetally toward oneself. But I'm wondering if we were able to look at these forces that are work in nature, but
Mhm.
also in us, it's kind of the battle between light and dark, or um, in our nature between the higher and lower self, as the Gita puts it. If we could see the operation of greed in this way of, oh, the force of gravity is at work in this person, rather than, being judgmental, this is a greedy person. You
Yeah.
know, we all have light within us that we just have to find some way to open the portal to it, which is very difficult when there's layers and layers, like you're saying. But is there a way that we can look abstractly at the force of greedy to, like, say, maybe judge the action without judging the actor so much? Like
Yeah.
seeing a force that's working through them, like Thomas. Oh, this person has a lot of inertia in them, where instead
Mhm.
of a lot of sattva, which sattva has been connected with light, and
Yeah.
Thomas with gravity. Uh,
Mhm.
and then maybe Rajas is a combination of the two, a blend of the two. But is there a way to look at this whole idea of generosity and gravity from this more forces in nature kind of way?
Sure. So let's think about it this way. So we go back to the idea that the divine is in all of us, right? The essence of everybody is divinity. So therefore, essentially, we're all divine, right? In essence, we're all divine. So what happens? We get these addictions. Now, what is an addiction? Addiction is an attachment, an intense attachment. And so the more attachments we have, the more we're weighted down. The gravity of all the things. So, how many people can't sleep at night worrying about all the things that they have and all the fear that I've got to do this because somebody's going to steal this? Or the more we have, the more we're attached. And the more we're attached, the more we're weighted down. You can't even walk sometimes. You have so many attachments. And people, there's the freedom to be is more constrained by our attachments than anything else. I mean, Bob Dylan was one of my early gurus, and on a Rolling Stone, he says, "When you ain't got nothing, you got nothing to lose." Right? And if you think about that, that's really powerful because we don't really need anything. So my guru brother, the head of the ashram, He's one of my younger Guru brothers, and so he has an ashram in Punjab. And nowadays, when I go see there, and that becomes my center in India. And every year he does a walk, and a walk will be like 2 months, maybe it'll take. And he'll say a spot, I'm going to go to that spot and I'm going to walk back. And he takes nothing with him. He just walks. And when he's tired, he lays down. And people will see he's a monk and he's traveling. And then people say, oh, Baba, that's a respectful reference to a sadhu that you see. Are you hungry? Say, I can eat, right? Or would you like to sleep here? Or, it's late. And sometimes he's walking at nighttime and people will see him. Maybe a farmer is out there just kind of going back to say, hey, Baba, where are you going? I'm just going to a unit. Well, that's hundreds of miles. Come spend the night, right? And if somebody gives that, well, then he'll go. And if not, he'll just keep walking. And he does that because running an ashram, he needs all sorts of things to run the ashram. And he does that for 2 months every year to help remind him that actually I own nothing. Everything is, I have a job to do, but none of it's mine. And that's the beauty of ashrams. The person that owns the ashram, they don't give it to their kids because they don't have any kids. At least they're not supposed to have any kids. And so it just goes to the next person in the lineage. And so you use things, but don't let things use you. Because when things use you, then Cliff, I think is very accurate. She said it's like gravity. It just weights you down. It makes it impossible for you to be light. And so the whole concept of light, which is wisdom, it's impossible to be wise when I become so loaded down with stuff that I think is me. So having stuff is not the issue. Thinking that it's yours and being attached to it, rather than it's just stuff that I have been given to share with others. Every time my teacher people would give him stuff, they would come in, they'd make a donation. After they leave, you give it to somebody. It's like, okay, you want to give me something? Great, that's wonderful. So now you've got the good karma of giving something, and now I'm going to give it away because I don't need it. And I see so many sadhus whose life is like that. You don't see that outside the ashram, but when you know them and you live with them and you see that, you realize most of them actually have very few possessions at all. They don't see the need for that. They spend a lot of time giving. They are very generous. Whatever money, whatever possessions, people will give them cloth, people will give them all sorts of things, and then just find somebody else and give it to them. You just become a tool, pass it on, right? Play it forward kind of thing. And it's great to see that. And then, and I've seen so many people in India I've seen wealthy people here that do the same thing. And it's fantastic to see. And you realize there's a real beauty in human beings. And there are those of us for whom things don't weigh us down. They just become things that we use. I'm retiring next year, so I'm going to be teaching after this semester, one more semester. I have like several thousand books in my office. So I've been telling all my students, come to my office, see if a book you like, take it. Like it helped me, and now it'll help you, right? And I do that whenever students are studying. I tell them, anytime you're studying something, if you need a book, come to my office. I probably have one that deals with that issue. And it's so great. Every time somebody takes a book away, I go, that's nice. One less I have to deal with. So, if we approach life like that the things we have, it's not really ours. The word to have, the verb to have, we don't really have it in Hindi, which is kind of interesting. Me rakta hum, I can say I keep something, but it's not the possession I have. We don't have that as a verb. What you do is it's near me. If I say mera paas kitab hai, that means there's a book near me. So that's a person
Interesting.
will say, I have. But the possession concept is not there to the extent that. And could you imagine it in English if we couldn't say I have?
Yeah, we just had last week the concept of trusteeship that we undertook, and that was within a Gandhian perspective, and Vinoba Bhave, of course, came up.
Yeah.
Did you want to make a comment or another question?
Sure, please, please.
Well, only if no one else wants to step up right now. I have another question.
Sure, Cliff, go ahead.
Okay, there's that wonderful tradition in Tibetan Buddhism of giving a white silk scarf to someone, and then they give it back to you, right? Isn't that how it works, kind of, Renee?
Yes,
Or
yes,
yeah, or Ramdas, you know about it.
that's
And
right, that's right.
this
And in the
whole
Hindu tradition, it's with a lei.
oh,
And the same thing, and then the teacher gives you back the
but
lei.
it's kind of this giving and receiving greeting that's just kind of wonderful. A lot of times we have as juxtaposed to one another giving and taking.
Yeah,
And taking has to do with greed, but there's this
yeah.
other kind of balance of giving and receiving. And I
Mhm.
was thinking about Renee's mom, Nancy. She is the most generous person, that I can think of, for like in the top 3 generous people that I know.
Mhm.
But she is just giving her whole life.
Yeah,
And now she's 92, Renee, and she's come to a stage in her life where she can't do everything herself for
yeah,
herself. She can't be independent.
yeah,
And Renee has said, Mom, you got to learn how to receive now. You got
yeah.
to, and it was really, really hard for her to
Mhm.
receive, but Renee kind of taught her that receiving is a form of giving.
Yes.
I was just wondering if other people have had that, people in their lives that had a hard time receiving as part of this wonderful giving and receiving element between human beings. That's a win-win situation for both the giver and receiver, and it goes back and forth. But
That's a
Okay.
great question to throw out to the whole group, I think.
So let me just comment on Cliff real quick. The talk that I gave on Hanuman, and that came up. And actually, I think either in a question you asked or in a comment that I made, that when somebody gives you something, it's pleasant for a while, and then you forget about it and you go on to something else. But when you give something to somebody, there's a longer sense of joy that you were able to make somebody happy, that you were able to make somebody's life a little bit better. That stays with you a lot longer than when you receive something. And my teacher would say, the giver's hand is always above, right? So you want to be, stand up and give, right? Giving is you are doing something. Receiving, you're just getting more possessions, right? Now, sometimes things you need, and obviously there are people who need help, and so we give them. But we are blessed by giving. Giving does something to our souls.
I guess my
Taking-
question was more: is there a grace? Can there be a grace in receiving
Oh yeah,
that was difficult for Renee's mom to learn, but somehow
and
finally she got it, and now
yeah.
her
No, there are
whole
many people like that.
dynamic has changed
Yeah,
because of.
there are many people like that. And I think the reason that there are people like that is because if you've grown up to see that people need things, and you are in a situation where you have more than what you think you need, and actually most of us have more than what we need. Um, giving it to people you appreciate, you feel that joy. When somebody gives you something, sometimes you feel guilty because I don't really need it. And I think that's why my teacher, no matter what somebody offered him, he would always take it. At the ashrams too, no matter what somebody gives to the ashram, they always readily accept it. And then they turn around and give it away, either in the form of food or in the form of money or something like that. So we have to learn to accept. And also, pride sometimes keeps us from accepting. And we have to let go of that pride. We have to say, they're not really giving to me. They're giving because it makes them feel good. when somebody gives you a gift, and people will give me gifts in India that I will never use. And I always thank them. Oh, how wonderful. Thank you. And then I turn around and give it away as soon as I can, right? Because I know that that benefits them. It makes them feel good that they were able to do something for somebody. And we need to encourage that. And we can't encourage that if we refuse to accept.
Yeah.
When somebody
I
wants to
think I
give,
saw Diana nodding her head. I wonder, do
Sure.
you want to add in here?
I've just had lots of thoughts. I know for myself, I tended to give a lot more than because I was taking care of everyone else, and so I had to learn to love myself and take care of myself. And when we talk about emptiness, it's really interesting when we can see that it's a broken heart or an empty heart that has greed or has to collect everything outside because they don't have a sense of love and peace
Oh,
inside.
absolutely. Addictions, all addictions are because of emptiness.
Yeah.
And greed is the worst addiction.
And it's learning, so I was thinking to myself as we can talk about the big ways that we experience greed, but how do we do it in our own lives? We're all greedy to a certain degree, in some way. And one of the biggest ones is, well, not the biggest ones. We're addiction to spirituality, or to have to get more teaching and go do this workshop and go do that. And I was thinking about the idea of just knowing we are one in ourselves, and we are also we are filled in ourselves. We don't have to. Yes, I think I love meditation. I love going to retreats and stuff. But there's something about a fulfillment just in ourselves as we are, that we don't have to be different. And if I know that, I'm not trying to. When I was doing hospital chaplains, I'd say to people, when you're giving out of need, your heart is not filled, and you're giving out of need because you need something back. But when your heart is filled with love, you give out of fullness. And so I think there's a different way. And for a long time, there was a guilt about even having material things. I think there was a book called Spiritual Materialism, and I can't remember even what it said. But I remember,
spiritual materialism, something like that. Yeah.
yeah, I remember really looking at that and saying it is okay to have things, a nice home or whatever, but it's how are we attached and how does that fill our soul? And so I think that a whole idea of the emptiness that we feel inside, for all of us, how do we fill it? And can we receive love? Many times people that are greedy don't know how to receive love. They don't know how to let people give to them in a way that's meaningful. It's only through barter or exchange. And so I don't know, those are just some of the thoughts that were going through my head. And I love the idea that the addiction is an intense attachment. So it's looking at where are we attached in our lives. We can look at other people, but where do I hold that in myself? And how do I let others receive, how do I receive others' love? It's not me taking care of everyone all the time. It's letting people take care of me too, and feeling that mutual respect and love. So thank you for your talk. It's brought up a lot of issues. I don't know exactly where it was going myself, or inside myself, but those are some of the thoughts that I had. So thank you.
I totally agree with you. Being able to accept is, and I think we should all think of it this way, being able to accept, when you give me something, I'm giving you something. I'm giving you the opportunity to share with me. And then I'm also getting from that. And then it's giving me an opportunity to then share that with someone else. And so giving is the process. If the giving stops, the process stops. Life is constantly being given to us. We are constantly interacting with others, and everything that we do can be a gift. Gandhiji said every action should be sadhana, and sadhana is spiritual practice. There was a great the advisor of my advisor, and when I was getting my PhD, one of my advisors was a guy by the name of Ninian Smart, and Ninian Smart's advisor was John Austin. And John Austin was a linguistic philosopher. He wrote a book, How to Do Things with Words. And what he says in there, every time you say something, you are doing something. Every time you say something, you are doing something. So speak with goodness, right? Because everything you say isn't everything, it's an action. Speaking is an action. Loving is an action. Being is an action. So if we understand that way, then it's wonderful to be able to give, because I'm continuing the process of life just as the way I have been given. And then we go back to what Cliff was saying, that the greed weighs us down, right? The giving lifts us up, makes us lighter. The greed holds us down. And so to be light and to be alive is to give.
It seems like this idea of receiving being a gift in and of itself. First of all, it does remind me of a passage by Meister Eckhart, actually, about how he, as a receiver of God's love and on God's grace, gives God his divinity.
Yeah.
Because out someone to receive his love and his grace, God wouldn't be God. So
Yeah,
that's a very interesting kind of thing. But also I was thinking maybe just, and you were speaking of speech, Ram Dass, the act of receiving speech, the act of listening is a gift in itself. And that is one way also to overcome greed, perhaps.
We say
listening ear.
Yeah, we say a prayer in our order before meal, right? And the translation of the prayer is that which you have given me, O Lord, I am now offering to you. Right? So it's like right from the beginning, I'm not offering you anything I did on my own, right? That which you have given me, I now offer to you. Please come before me and accept my offering. And so it begins by us receiving, and then we give and we receive in that giving. By giving to the divine, we receive grace, we receive love, we can receive everything. And so every time we are giving, we are blessing, and every time we allow others to give us, we are being blessed. And I think it's wonderful to give constantly. I mean, whenever somebody wants it, just straight away, whenever somebody wants you to give you something, unless it's like something that is really terrible, accept it. Accept it with love, because you have now blessed them. You have given them an opportunity to experience something that is so important. And then you turn around and give it to somebody, right? And the process goes on. And those of us who understand that, we can enjoy
it. Cliff, just a moment before I call on you, I wanted to give Sharon and Mariange a chance to add in, or Carolyn or Kat. They're still moving. Any of you? Mariange, right?
Hi. Aloha. I thought it was really nice to hear about your mother and her generosity and how she passed it on to her daughter. And you were talking about, Ram Dass was talking about the givingness of the mother. She gave a soul or the spirit to her daughter. So that's nice. I just think it's very simply stated, that the good work is abundantly available for us, and the consciousness of our kind of walking in the light and continuing to pray and dedicate to that is what I kind of have a takeaway from the experience of listening to this talk. It's really peaceful. It's very humbling, and it makes me kind of desire to just slow down so that I'm able to get better. But even so, the idea of attachments and what I bring with me, that was a huge challenge. And as I mean, I just don't even know how to approach that. It seems as if every day it's like I am your vessel, work through me, and then I'm certainly grappling with being attached to, did I do good? Did I work? Did it happen? And so that attachment is kind of fundamentally what I wondered if you could comment on, is like, is that just the ego, or is it what can we do to work with that attachment for,
Yeah.
am I enough?
Okay.
Am I enough?
Sure.
Which I think a
Sure.
lot of people really engage in.
So if we start out with the understanding, this message came up to start my video. Let's see.
I think you're good. We see you
Okay.
and hear you.
Are we good?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So if we start out by understanding that everything is divine, everything that we have is a gift to us. And then we do with it in a way that, can I help somebody with my gift to them? And sometimes my gift to them might be, stand up and do it yourself. Don't be afraid to give hard gifts. I remember once I was in Madison, Wisconsin. I was giving a talk at University of Wisconsin at Madison. And I was walking down the street and there was a beggar there. And normally what I do, and I learned this from when I was in India, I'd always carry food in a bag, and so that I would give food to people. And I looked at him and he says, "Okay, can I have a couple bucks?" And I said, "So tell me this, be honest with me. If I give you a couple dollars, what are you going to do with it? Are you going to go get food? Are you going to go get a drink, get alcohol?" He says, "I'll go get alcohol." And I said, "So me giving you that actually isn't going to help you, is it? I'll give you something to eat. I'll take you to get something to eat." He says, "I'm not hungry." So I went, "Okay, goodbye." Right. And so sometimes it's easier to just give somebody something without seeing, is what I'm giving them helping them or not? Right. And that's what I have to do. And then we have to think, when people give me something, is it helping me? Or maybe I need to say thank you, but I don't need that. And I mean assistance. But sometimes it's important to accept assistance from people for their sake and for our sake. To allow that I'm not in control. Everything is being given to me. God has given me everything, given me this life, given me all these things, health and whatever. Accept, give, and the question that you asked was about ego. How do I know if the ego involved? Well, actually, it's pretty easy. Think about it like this. Okay, is that I want to do going to help me help my pride, help my ego? If that's what it's going to do, then it's probably not God talking to me. It's probably my ego talking to me. And that's why I think in the Bible it says, don't let the left hand see what the right hand does. Give quietly, give silently. And when you do it, think, in doing this, am I really benefiting somebody, or am I doing it because it'll make me feel good? And we shouldn't do it just because it makes us feel good. We should do it because we know God is in everything, and and the divine is everything, and everything that we have is the divine. And okay, is share it. It's just time to share, and that's what we do. That's what makes life good. Not and good in the sense that don't give because then you can go, "Oh yeah, ha ha, right?" That's the ego. But give silently, give quietly, help others in a way that doesn't make you think, now I'm special. And anything that we do that helps us move beyond it's all about me is good. And that's not the ego. That's just our soul telling us this is the right thing to do. I don't know if that answers your question, but that's the way I approach it.
I was just going to say, I think you just brought up something really important. And that's, I'm practicing or learning that sometimes saying no or walking away or setting a boundary is really the best gift we can give. And it's the
Absolutely.
hardest thing that I've ever had to do. And it's saying that I don't want to participate in this relationship in the way it is. Or even with him, are you going to drink? And I think that I realized when you were speaking that sometimes my keep wanting to be attached to that person or that thing is really about my own wanting to really I'm the one that's giving most, or I'm the one that's trying the hardest. And but when I walk away or I say no, I can't handle this. This behavior is not healthy for me or you. We need to stop. And I know a lot of people work with that, and to see that as a gift for ourselves and for the other person. And as
Yeah.
hard as that is, sometimes that tough love, we do it with kids, but as adults and with people around, or not giving them money if you feel like they're going to go drink, and so that idea of setting boundaries and saying no is probably one of the hardest gifts that I'm learning, and yet really important. And I just keep praying and saying, show me, is this what I'm going to do? And I get messages from the weirdest places saying, no, you're not supposed to connect. It's like, it's really interesting, because my way is I want to keep trying, I want to keep doing, and I'm really learning that sometimes it's saying no.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's an important gift that we don't think about very often.
I'll use the
Great
example.
idea. Yeah.
Yeah, the example of my students.
Ramdas,
Yeah.
excuse me, just one moment. I'm seeing we have just 1 minute left before we're at the top of the hour. I did want to introduce to everyone, this is Deshane Shah, and he is going to play our role of Ram in Diwali this year. And
Oh, nice.
there is his wife, Jade, who will be playing Sita. And so it just is serving as a reminder to me to let you all know that on October 25th, which is 2 weeks today, we will not have gems. And the very next day, instead of gems, we're inviting everyone to come either in person or online to our Diwali celebration. And in it, we enact the Indian epic of the Ramayana. The fact that Ramdas has his name is from the Ramayana epic. The fact he's from the Ramananda tradition. That's the joy of being a devotee of Ram. So it's all fitting together very well here. So I just wanted to use the fact that we have our Ram and Sita showing up for today to remind us all.
Fantastic. And what the two of you should just remember is Ram is the divine in all beings. Sita is the divine mother. She is the original creation, and she is the creator, which is interesting. We talk about, creator being male. No, the creator is female. Mothers create, right? Mothers give life. And so in the under Adyat Ramayana, she says that. She says, in the presence of Ram, I create the universe and then inhabit it. So she is the creator and she is the creation both. And that's why in our monastic order, there is one division that says we're all female, right? It said, because we're all the part of the creation, and the creation is all female, created by the Divine Mother.
Oh, I like that. And I think this would be a really appropriate time for us to give our thanks to Ramdas and realize that Ramdas has been celebrating Diwali and the Ramayana with us at least since 2013 or 14. And he himself is a scholar of the Ramayana who has been asked to go to India to speak to the Indians about the Ramayana. So it's just a wonderful confluence right now to have both of you reminding us of the Ramayana as we thank Ram Dass for
And I
his
think-
beautiful presentation on from greed to generosity.
Yeah, and so Renee and Cliff, I want to thank you both, and for all of the rest of you that are here. Thank you for the satsang. Thank you for the time to us to be able to get together and share such meaningful giving and taking, such wonderful gifts.
Thank you so much. If somebody could look at their almanac for next week, I know our speaker will be Bob Buss. He's going to be speaking on the tradition of activism, and particularly, I think he's going to focus on perhaps on Martin Luther King Jr. And what is the topic?
Compassionate ideation.
Compassionate ideation. Yeah. Yeah, the power of, this creation to create something compassionately, altruistically. Yeah.
Mhm.
So that will be a lovely sequel to today's. And Ram Dass, thank you ever so much. You graced us with your presence and your speech, your long history of just being such a servant to the world. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ram Dass.
Thank you all. Thank you all.
Thank
Hello.
you. Aloha.
Aloha.
Nice to have you, Carolyn.
Thank
Glad
you.
you're here, Sharon. Thank you, Marianne, for being here, for hosting, Kat. Aloha.